Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to ReZOO, the Zoo Review podcast. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am joined once again by my incredible co-host and fellow passionate zoo lover, the one and only Jodi McFarlane. Say hello, Jodi.
Hello, everyone.
Presented by Pangolin, the conservation podcast. This sister show promises to explore, appreciate, and highlight the fantastic conservation work of zoos from around the world, while also offering a perspective on the visitor experience.
So, as you may have heard, Bristol Zoo, the 5th oldest zoo in the world, recently closed its gates for the very last time. So today we are celebrating the history of this wonderful collection.
That's right. Following its closure, we wanted to memorialise this zoo and celebrate the joy it brought us. And so we thought, even though you can't visit, it would be amazing to have a bit of a chat about our time with Bristol Zoo.
Now, to make this extra special, we are going to be doing things a little bit differently.
Yes, we are. So, to start off this episode, I'm going to be joined by the fantastic Connor Davies, one of Bristol Zoo's engagement and learning presenters, to discuss the importance and history of this amazing collection, and his memories with this incredible place.
Then, I'll be back at the end to give you my 2 stars and our closing thoughts.
As you can tell, we have a lot to get through today, so, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back to the show. As we said in our introduction, we are doing things a little bit differently today. So instead of being joined, like usual, by my lovely co-host Jodi, today I am joined by one of the lovely staff members of Bristol Zoo, the fabulous Connor Davies, one of their engagement and learning presenters. He's here to help explore the history, some of his favourite moments with the zoo, and just celebrate the legacy and everything that has gone on in the life and times of the fabulous Bristol Zoo. So thank you very much for joining me today, Connor.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are very, very welcome. For listeners who are kind of thinking, that name sounds familiar, you have previously been on the show in one of our regular episodes, talking a little bit about Bristol, a little bit about your work with the Chester Zoo Youth Board. So that is where listeners might recognise your voice and name from. But for listeners who are maybe unfamiliar or need a little bit of a jog of the memory, could you introduce yourself to them, tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm one of the engagement and learning presenters at Bristol Zoo. So I've been there since November in a paid role, but previously had volunteered for 3.5 years up to that point in a public engagement role. So kind of talking to visitors about the animals that they're seeing on site and kind of everything about Bristol Zoo and Bristol Zoological Society, which owns that site, and working across at the Wild Place Project site as well, which, as we'll probably chat a bit more about, is where Bristol Zoo will actually be moving to over the next couple of years. And so that means that now that I'm in a paid role, do all of the kind of public engagement stuff. So the public talks, the engagement activities around the animals and our conservation activities, but also all the school sessions and education aspect as well.
Yes, and I can vouch for Connor's ability because I've seen him in action at Bristol Zoo. He was wonderful enough to take me and Jodi round, show us all of the different animals and things. So fantastic, fantastic work. And I'm glad and very, very excited to have you here because, yes, always a good time, always a good laugh to have you here. I guess to get us started, though, we kind of introduced you. We've talked vaguely around Bristol Zoo, but we haven't really introduced it to the listeners. Normally we would kind of do a what was our first impressions type thing, but obviously you work there, so you can do more than first impressions. You could introduce it properly and wholly and tell us a little bit about it. So could you introduce Bristol Zoo to our listeners for anyone who isn't as familiar with it?
No, absolutely. So Bristol Zoo is a very, very historical zoo. It's an old Victorian zoo. It's the 5th oldest in the world, the oldest outside of a capital city. And it's argued, there's a bit of debate on this point, but there's a very good chance it is the first zoo to be called a zoo. So using zoo as a shortened term for zoological gardens. So we may literally have been the original zoo, which is incredible. So we have got a lot of history. We've been open for 186 years, opened up back in 1836. And so we've got a very, very big place in the heart of Bristol, and kind of over those 186 years have had a huge impact on the communities around us, built up a very big kind of cultural place right at the heart of Bristol, being situated as we are right in the centre, in the middle of the kind of the bustling city. So it's a very kind of significant zoo, in terms of kind of the legacy that we have on the sector and kind of on the city that we're in as well. So back when we started 186 years ago, we were actually started up by Henry Riley, who was a physician and a lecturer. He used to lecture on all kinds of scientific topics, so things like botany, herpetology, kind of anatomy. Interesting fact, though, that I found out actually doing a bit of research for this is that he was so interested in anatomy that when he was doing all of his lecturing, he was at one point fined £6 for robbing graves in order to dissect them as part of his lectures.
Okay. I was very concerned about what you were going to say there, because I was like, oh no, anything to do with anatomy, my eyes are going, oh no, 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 no. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, robbing graves, I'm like, bad, but not as bad as I thought it might have been. like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he started this one up, started to get the ball rolling back in 1836, and actually bought the zoo land for £3,574 of
Bargain.
that time's money, worth about £250,000 today.
Less of a bargain, but still. Like, that's mad. That's absolutely mad.
Yeah, which when you think about the kind of area in Bristol we're in now, that would be an absolute steal. So yeah, it just kind of goes to show how different things were back then. But to help raise money for that, they sold shares in the zoo for £25 each, and one of the most famous buyers was Isabel Kingdom Brunel, who is of course famous for things like the SS Great Britain and the Clifton Suspension Bridge. So a very big, famous Bristol name, had stakes in the zoo very early on.
If only you were around back then, you would have bought every share. I can tell. Like, you would have been like half owner by this point. You would have built up the like. Oh,
Honestly, if only Stu still did that, I'd have a share in every zoo in the UK at this point. Just start collecting them.
Mm-hmm. If it got me free entry, I think that would be well worth it, to be fair, because I go to too many zoos in my life. I spend too much money in zoos. So to be able to buy a share in them and just commit for life, be like, yep, I know I'm going to keep coming back here. I know you're going to get all my money anyway. So I'm just going to buy a chunk of you. It would make much more sense. No, that's fantastic. That's really, really interesting. And I did a little bit of research as well. And just building on what you said, actually, I kind of looked on the Bristol Zoo website, and you were talking about how many communities and things that have been touched by the zoo around Bristol. I think it was on the website, it says 40 million school-age children have been shown the value of nature by Bristol Zoo, and about 90 million visitors as well. That's insane in its lifetime. That's like huge, huge numbers of people have been touched by their experiences there, and probably found a new love for maybe a weird or unusual species or a plant or something like a little creepy crawly thing or something. And that's just amazing. I think it goes to show the power and legacy of Bristol Zoo and what it will leave behind. So it's really, really an interesting and good way to start. I also wanted to give you a little bit of a pop quiz, because I always do this to Jodi, where I'm like, I'm gonna ask her a question where I'm like, I'm intrigued to know see if she knows the answer. She's being recorded. Can you name the 5 oldest zoos in the world?
I absolutely can.
Can you actually? Okay.
I think so.
I've got them written
So
down.
there's Zoo Vienna.
Yep.
Is oldest. Then it's the Menagerie du Jardin des Plantes that I've probably butchered, but that's Paris Zoo. And then I want to say it's London Zoo.
Yep.
And then Dublin.
Yep.
And then us.
Yep. And soon to be artists in Amsterdam is probably sitting there going, yes, because they are currently in 6th place. And it's, I was looking at it earlier, and the Vienna was founded in 1752, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's absolute madness, isn't it?
It's bizarre.
Fantastic.
I'm genuinely shocked. Like, I'm very impressed that you knew that, because I was like, haha, I'm going to catch him out on this one. No.
You underestimate me, clearly.
Well, I underestimated myself, because I was like, no one's going to know this. I didn't know this. I had to Google it earlier. No, that's really, really interesting. And I think, yeah, it goes to show like the scale of the time that's been around and the scale of the people it's reached is just fantastic and amazing. And yeah, it goes to show exactly why collections like this should exist and
Yeah.
help to reach people, which is just fantastic. Um,
Yeah, and those statistics you mentioned are really really great to know because I'd not heard those specific statistics, but that's fantastic. And like, yeah, it goes to show kind of just how many people we do reach and continue to reach to this day.
mhm,
I like that you mentioned the plants in there as well, seeing a nice plant, because one thing I didn't actually mention when introducing us is kind of that we are Bristol Zoo Gardens.
mhm,
We're one of the kind of only a few zoos in the UK that kind of retain the gardens in their name,
mhm,
because we have got an absolutely incredible gardening team who look after the site and make sure all of our award-winning gardens are looked after and look absolutely stunning. So we've got an incredible team of gardeners and landscapists who kind of work and make sure we've got these incredibly significant plant collections and kind of
mhm,
look after those as well. And our head gardener, Matt Bufton, has been absolutely instrumental in all of that as well. So he is holds so much plant knowledge. He's absolutely fantastic. He's
mhm,
kind of landscaping to make sure that people are drawn into the zoo and make sure they feel things based on all the plants and the kind of surroundings around them.
mhm.
And it's absolutely gorgeous. So his work is definitely still recognised.
Mhm. I think I like that. And shout out to all of the people who work in zoos across the country doing plant things because I feel like people underappreciate them all the time. And like I always think about that when I look at like when we went to Chester, me and Jodi last year, something that jumped out was that I think somewhere on the website it said that they're home to seven or like a number of national plant collections. Edinburgh Zoo, I think, is the second largest botanical collection in Scotland, even though like it's like and people don't know that and they don't appreciate these. So shout out to any botanical lovers out there, and any people who work in the botanics or work in the like plant side of things. Shout out to you for your hard work because I feel like if planting is bad in a zoo, people do notice, but when it's good, people don't appreciate it enough. So yeah, good. Yeah, good shout out to you, gardeners, and fantastic. Now, before we go too much down, well, I've consensus already. Me and Connor seem to have always when we record a problem, and that problem is me taking us down tangents that we should not be going down. What I will take us down, though, is the next topic I wanted to talk about, which was a little bit about the history of Bristol Zoo. As we've talked about, it's kind of one of the oldest zoos in the world, 186 years, I believe you said. A long, long time it's been around. And throughout that time, it has made huge impacts. It's also changed a lot since it first opened. There's been species come and go. There's been births of incredible things. There's been all sorts of amazing stuff happen at Bristol Zoo. And so I wanted to touch on maybe some of your favorite moments throughout history, Connor, some of the things that jump out to you when you look back on all this time as important conservation or just moments for the zoo in its history. I don't know. Do you have one that you want to talk about first? Is there one that you particularly find special?
I mean, I've got a whole list. You
Mhm.
will not be surprised to know. But I thought, kind of talking about history, I thought I meant to do a little bit of research and find out, kind of get a picture of what the zoo looked like when it first opened. So, kind of in the first year or two, what a visit to Bristol Zoo would look like. So, apparently, it actually opened with 7 staff members. That was it for the site, and 4 of those were animal keepers.
That's
So,
not enough.
and
That's can you imagine now with the huge visitor numbers that are probably have been to see it in its closing months, 7 people manning that ship. That would be insane. That's
yeah, it's a completely different time.
Mhm,
But some of the animals that they were looking after
mhm,
include a male African leopard, a
mhm,
pair of sloth bears, a female Indian leopard, a fallow deer, a camel, a mountain zebra, which probably was a Cape mountain zebra, which are now very endangered, and there's actually only one in captivity in the whole world.
mhm,
Um, and by the year after opening, they'd actually brought an Asian elephant in as well. So started out pretty big,
mhm.
with an Asian elephant that they bought for £270 back in the day.
Bargain. Bargain of the this is money.
I was going to say,
Money is strange. I don't like, oh, mental. Like, but they started out
Yeah,
with some big hitters, I suppose, that really
yeah.
like
So
pull in the
no,
crowds.
absolutely, yeah. Not that's not a slow build up at all. That's kind of
Mhm.
starting out with some pretty impressive animals. So yeah, that's kind of what it would have looked like in its early years.
And when you put that in context, I suppose, of the people of that time in Bristol, if you were to put an elephant in front of them, they didn't have David Attenborough, they didn't have like Steve Irwin showing them all these weird reptiles, they didn't have all these TV shows and podcasts and things to expose them to like nature and all of that sort of thing. So these must have been bizarre, amazing, incredible, inspiring, strange, wonderful things. And it's just bizarre to think that it was, yeah, it must have been so, I suppose, magical for them. Even though now we would look back and perhaps think, not always, perhaps the best of circumstances for these animals in the 1800s, but for the people around then, it probably did inspire some kind of love and interest. And it would be amazing to think when you'd never had any exposure to like that, wow, like what your mind would be going through when you saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, the conditions that they were kept in almost certainly weren't good enough or ideal
Mhm.
because the kind of understanding about how animals should be kept wasn't there because it was rare that these animals were being kept. But it is yeah, almost certain that this is the first time most of the people going to that zoo will have ever seen any of those animals. Some might not have even seen them in books or anything like that. So I mean, their literal first exposure to knowing these animals existed was probably visiting Bristol Zoo, which is absolutely incredible to think about. And that's kind of an impact that you'd have had back then that you simply can't get these days, or like not anywhere near as close to, because most of the animals that people see in zoos they've probably come across before.
Mhm.
They might have seen on a nature documentary like a David Attenborough or something, as you mentioned. So it's yeah, it's just a completely kind of different time and a completely different experience
Mhm.
that you can't even really imagine for us.
No, because I'm trying to think, like thinking back of all of the resumes that we've done with Jodi, was there anything where I was genuinely like, like, and obviously I'm a special case because I'm a bit weird and I know all, like, I know all of these things about all of these strange animals. But like, I'm trying to think, was there ever anything where I was like genuinely astounded to see, like, I can't believe this exists, and like, probably not. So it's amazing to think these people wouldn't have known, and it's kind of this kind of fairy tale idyllic picture that like they actually we say that they probably were terrified of some of the things, but in my mind it's very lovely and wow, look how magical this was. But yeah, it's really strange to think about. I don't know. Moving forward, then was there what was kind of how did it change then over time? Was there anything you wanted to highlight next up on the list of things?
Yeah, so I mean, there's countless kind of developments and things, but they definitely still kept some incredible animals. So by 1923, which granted is almost 100 years later, but they had Tasmanian devils, which is actually a donation from a private keeper who'd kind of collected them from Tasmania. They also had 7 cagoos, which is a lovely, incredible bird, endemic to New Caledonia. They're little grey. They've got long legs and they've got an incredible crest that they can stick up as part of their mating ritual. Look absolutely amazing. They're
Were you talking about
potentially
these
what
on Twitter recently? I
I
think
have
so.
been
Now
talking.
I'm like, now this is all coming back to me. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, a Twitter competition kind of introduced me to them, and now they're one of my favourite birds in the world. They're absolutely fantastic. And now there's actually only 59 in zoos around the world. So
Mhm.
for us to have had 7 of them at some point in the kind of, I think that was around the same time in the 1920s to 1930s.
Mhm.
Again, just a really cool animal to have. Um, we've had amazing animals. We've had clouded leopards, we've had ocelots,
Mhm.
almost every kind of species of big cat we've had at some point. Um, bears, giraffes, elephants. Yeah, it's the kind of the collections that we've had over the time are just astounding. And again, as we've kind of progressed, those have been phased out because we've realised that our kind of remit is more smaller species to fit with the smaller site that we've got.
Mhm.
But I think lots of people have lots of significant memories with some of those larger animals that were there for some time.
Yeah, because around the
So, for
same.
example,
Sorry.
oh no, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say because I was doing a little bit of and around the same kind of time period you were talking about the 1920s, 19 kind of early 1900s. There was like things like a new lion house. There was an aquarium. That was when the aquarium was first built, and there was a polar bear around that time, and like all these sorts of things cropping up. That nowadays, obviously, we would not keep in those circumstances, but really interesting that it was kind of around at that time. I think one of the other things I really loved was one of the zoo's major attractions in 1913 was an elephant called Raja, which I love because for many reasons, one of which is one of my favorite drag queens is called Raja. So when I saw that, I was like, I have to give a shout out to my favorite of all time, I have to say. And so I was like, I had to throw that in somehow, work it into the conversation. And when you brought up the early 1900s, I was like, here's my way in. But no, that's a fantastic, like huge range of species. Really, really interesting, really, really bizarre. I wondered kind of slightly later on, I think, is when I was looking through the timeline of things. That's when kind of really interesting breeding programs and births and things started to happen as well. And I think the one that jumped out to me, because I'm a big fan and I think I brought them up in every ReZOO I possibly can, was in the 1960s. You were the first zoo to ever home okapis. And in 1967, Bristol Zoo was the first zoo to ever successfully breed okapis. And I think that's fantastic as well, because they are a bizarre, underappreciated, and magical thing that are very, for people who don't know, who haven't listened to the other zoos where I've rambled on about them, they look almost like zebras. They're more closely related to giraffes. And they're this mysterious, interesting creature that actually, when you look at the timeline, was only really discovered to science around that same kind of period. So it's really amazing that Bristol Zoo went from having them to breeding them so quickly on in their discovery. I think that was something that jumped out to me as an amazing point in history for you guys. I really, really appreciated that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right there. I think they were only discovered by science in about 1901.
Mm-hmm.
So to go from discovering them and then 60 years later, Bristol Zoo having them,
Mm-hmm.
felt it is definitely very, very significant. And yeah, they've had a very big part of our kind of history as well. So they were at Bristol Zoo, and we pretty much constantly kept them from when we first got them all the way up to kind of recently. At some point in the kind of 2000s to 2010s, they moved over to Wild Place, which is our sister site, and now they've moved on to other kind of breeding programs around and other zoos around Europe as we kind of get ready to develop. But we do have plans, hopefully, to bring them back at some point in the future. So yeah, they're one of our very significant species that we've got a lot of history with. The other, of course, being gorillas, which is one of our absolutely huge success stories, and one of our main attractions at the zoo at the moment is Gorilla Island, and our family of eight, I should say, I think, 8 gorillas now. And so, yeah, we had the very, very famous gorilla back again in the early 1900s. So back in 1930, we got Alfred, the gorilla. He arrived to us from what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, aged 3. And at the time, he was only the second living gorilla in Europe. So he was a very big treat. The only other one was in Berlin Zoo. He was called Bobby. But yeah, they were the 2 gorillas that were in Europe. So he's a very, very big name in our history.
Whoever was naming those gorillas, 10 out of 10 for first gorillas in Europe. Bobby and Alf, that's top quality naming conventions for that. Yeah, 10 out of 10 for those.
Yeah. Again, he was kind of treated in a way that was akin to the times. So he was led around the zoo on a chain. He also was often seen wearing a woolly jumper. And in the winter, he was actually involved in snowball fights, and they tried to make him ice skate. So, but because of all that, he became absolutely hugely well loved around Bristol. That all kind of came to an end when he smashed a photographer's tripod, and then was not let out again. So he was then confined to the enclosure, and he sadly died back in 1948. But over the kind of some of the years of the Second World War, um, he was definitely one of the most popular animals, and 20,000 postcards of him were sold in 1 year, which kind of gives you an idea of just how much the people of Bristol liked him. And you can actually still see him. He's taxidermied in Bristol Museum. Um, so
Lovely.
yeah, people still travel to see him. People still travel to see him and kind of get a sense because he was just so important and so kind of massive and influential.
Mhm. That's yeah, and I appreciated as well when I went. Something that really stood out to me when we went to visit Bristol was there is a little statue of him, his little head, as you go into the gorilla house now, and I think that's a very nice way of kind of looking back and being like, here is an animal that inspired so much love of nature. We're not going to forget about him, and I think it's something we often forget when you visit a zoo. If you visit as just a visitor and you don't really know or you don't really speak to people or the staff, everyone will have these animals that mean so much to them and mean like they're just their favorites. They bring them, they're like family because you see them every day. Like they're just magical and wonderful and fantastic. And I think what's really special about that is that it's a way of memorializing this animal that was clearly that at that time. Like it was a nice little tribute to him, and I really really appreciated that because I know for a fact when I go to like Edinburgh Zoo, my local zoo, the two rhino boys are like they just have own my heart, Kabid and Sanjay, and like there's these animals that I was like if they were to ever sadly go, I would like them to be memorialized because they are so fantastic and have helped like educate people and inspire people. So I think lovely thing to do, and really really interesting. Um,
Yeah,
mhm.
absolutely. And Alfred was a really big character, but he was also the kind of start of a really, really successful run of keeping gorillas at Bristol Zoo. So from being kind of the collection in the UK with only got kind of one or two gorillas in Europe back in the 1930s, we were actually the first UK zoo to breed gorillas in the 1970s,
Mhm,
with the first one being born in 71. So it kind of goes to show that our success with Alfred carried on and
mhm,
meant that we've had this kind of really incredible legacy of gorillas ever since, and up until our kind of troop now, which features several members of the troop that we've hand reared or kind of had these really kind of close experiences with and got really kind of involved in helping them to kind of thrive as a group.
mhm,
And so they were a very obvious choice for the kind of big iconic animals to move over to Wild Place as well. So those are the animal that we're focusing one of our major new developments around at the new site because they were just so iconic and we've had such a history with them
mhm,
that we absolutely couldn't kind of go out of keeping them.
mhm,
But yeah, so gorillas again another one that we've really enjoyed and kind of really brought to the attention, and we've kind of carried on that legacy, not just with gorillas in captivity as well, but one of our major projects out in the wild, one of our big conservation projects is actually working out in Equatorial Guinea,
mhm,
using camera trap images to survey the populations of gorillas and kind of do what we can to conserve and protect those out in the wild as well. So I think a lot of people, when they think of Bristol Zoo, think of Alfred and they think of gorillas,
mhm,
um, which is pretty amazing.
mhm. I think so. I think that the little smirk that you gave for listeners at home, you could see the absolute joy that history of gorillas brings because there was a little like charming like no little like glimmer there at the end, and it was like yes, and I would 100% agree. Like the poster child for Bristol Zoo are the gorillas because I think they are beloved. They are an exceptionally interesting species, one of the great apes. They just are like fantastic, and yeah, I can see why because yes, they're really special, and it's nice to know there is that link to the wild there as well of the kind of and again that's an important point that we should highlight is that zoos perhaps back when we were talking in the history might not have been doing this conservation work, but over time Bristol Zoo has grown not just in the care of animals within the zoo, but also probably in the care of animals out with the zoo by contributing to more of the projects, by helping with more things. I know there's stuff with the Livingston's fruit bats. There's stuff within the UK as well that they kind of contribute to. I think crayfish, and then other local areas around Bristol kind of contributions to that kind of conservation element. So it's nice to see that kind of aspect grow throughout time as well, and I think really really special. and really, really interesting. And something just before we move on from births, unless you have more birth stories, one that I wanted to highlight again, a fantastic whoever's naming the animals at Bristol Zoo, excellent work, because in 1958 there was a polar bear cub born and he was called Sebastian. And I just think that's the cutest name for like little Sebastian. I just love that. I just love that so much. So just another little baby there for the listeners that I fantastically named. So Bristol, 10 out of 10 for names, really. Fantastic work. I don't know, what was did you have anything else you want? Well, actually, a silly question. There's always going to be more to the list. Always going to be more to the list. So what is the next thing that we're moving on to in the history?
So I thought we were talking about Alfred and iconic
Mm-hmm.
characters. So there's another iconic character that I think a lot of people think of when they think of Bristol Zoo,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually shared the same home as Alfred shared,
Mm-hmm.
or at least they were. They shared the same home, but at different times.
Okay.
So the what is now currently the Gorilla House was previously the Elephant and Giraffe House. And there's been several iconic elephants
Mm-hmm.
over the years at Bristol Zoo. You mentioned Raja earlier. There's also two big ones that I'm thinking of: Rosie and Wendy. Again, excellent
Excellent
names.
names. Yeah, good job,
Um,
Bristol.
but
Mm-hmm.
I think Rosie particularly stands out in the hearts of visitors of a certain age because up until she kind of died back in 1961, visitors could actually ride on Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was an extra little bit of income they could charge for elephant rides to take visitors around the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not something we do these days, absolutely not. But several people that come in and we speak to, especially over the kind of the last few weeks as the zoo's been closing down, have shared these really fun memories of seeing Rosie and kind of getting to ride on Rosie, and that how that kind of really captured their imaginations and opened up their hearts to kind of the animals and elephants and things like that. Um, so yeah, not something we'd advocate for now,
Mm-hmm.
but again, a
Mm-hmm.
really historical thing that at the time was quite unique and quite impactful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I suppose that's the equivalent then with of kind of nowadays maybe like keeper experiences type thing where those are very thought through. They think through the animal welfare, they think through the impacts of that when it's the different species they use. So it is kind of the equivalent, which I guess you see how impactful a keeper experience can be for people nowadays. It's kind of the so again, while we would not endorse that, you can see why that idea was there and why it would happen and why it was so special for people who because their 1960s was not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. So that's you can see why there would be still people around who have that kind of special bond. It's fantastic that they would still remember something like that, and it again shows the power of nature when it connects with someone. Really, really special. Really, really special, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And then yeah, Wendy came back in a little bit after Rosie, and she still lived in that enclosure up until 2002. Um, and so you can actually see still on the side of Gorilla Island now where they've got their outdoor space. If you look carefully on that side, you can see it carved into the brick of the Gorilla House are a couple of outlines of some elephants. Um, Again, it's a nice little legacy of kind of reflecting on what that building used to be while accepting that the conditions weren't ideal and it's now been modernised into a much more suitable enclosure for our gorillas.
Mhm. And I think that's something that all zoos have to like, and I think that's a really nice way of doing it. And it's similar to like when me and Jodi talked about with the penguin pool at London Zoo, like the kind of memorialization of what was once there, and the kind of like look at that. Look, we have kept this. It is a listed building, so we have to keep it. But here is a lot of information about what it was, how we've changed, how we've grown, and that's a nice way to kind of have another special like the Alfred statue, a nice special like for people who know. If you know, you know it's there, like a nice little memorial. I really appreciate that. Actually, really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think there's quite a lot of that around Bristol Zoo because again, being an old zoo, we've got quite a lot of listed buildings and listed structures and things like that. So there are some really big kind of iconic habitats that you can still see or still see signs of when you kind of walk around. So you probably notice Monkey Temple,
Yes.
which is a very big kind of themed uh, temple that used to surprisingly hold monkeys in.
No, you'd never
It had
know.
yeah, it had rhesus macaques kind of in there. At some point, it had goats in there as well, and it was kind of almost like a bear pit, but with monkeys in rather than bears. And you could actually access it from an underground tunnel that the keepers had to go down under, climb up to a ladder through in order to clean out their indoor enclosure.
I
Um,
love that. That's creative
yeah,
thinking, I
and
suppose.
it's for the time it was really stunning, really unique, really beautiful. But again, very unsuitable for the animals by today's modern standards. So it's now it's not used to hold any animals at all, but it's still kept there to kind of show just how it used to look and kind of how iconic it is as well. And what is now Seal and Penguin Coasts used to be where our kind of most recent polar bear enclosure was. And so actually, if you kind of look at the certain angle of from the Seal and Penguin Coast, you can see the old white walls that were painted white to kind of mimic the Arctic and the ice to kind of what they thought at the time to kind of make the polar bears feel more comfortable by replicating their habitat. And so yeah, as you walk around, there's quite a lot of things that point to what things used to be and how things used to look a long time ago.
That's really nice actually. That's an interesting I'm almost now like I wish we were recording this a month before Bristol Zoo closed so I could go and try and find all these little things. Now, whatever happens to that site, I'll be sneaking in and having a look around, see which of these things survive the whatever the changes are. I'm like, oh, like knocking if it gets turned. I know the plan is to maybe sell it to become housing or something. Like knocking on doors, being like, "Excuse me, I think you live where a polar bear used to live. Could I just nip into your garden, just have a look, just don't mind me. I'm just a little intrigued." When celebrities go back to their flats in New York City and they kind of ring on the doorbell and no one answers because they want to go in. That's the vibe of me going around old zoos, being like, "Hello, I'm back. Let me see." No, that's fantastic. That's really interesting, actually. Really, really interesting. What about what next? I'm learning so much, and I'm like, oh, I wish I knew. I wish I knew this. So tell me more. Tell me more.
Oh, let's have a look. Well, so we've glossed over it a little bit, but being 186 years old, the zoo has gone through both world wars.
Yes.
And so there are quite a couple of little interesting tidbits from those two. Because as you can imagine, they struggled quite a lot, but maybe not as much as you might think. So they didn't seem to have too much of a downturn in terms of visitors through the doors and things like that. Some of the kind of main issues were the income, and so some of their animals became a bit expensive to feed because of the increased prices of food and rationing and things like that. So apparently during the First World War, they had a couple of common seals. They got a little bit too expensive to keep, and so they came up with a couple of novel solutions.
Oh no.
So one of those common seals was released directly into the Bristol Channel, just set free to go about its life. The second was sent to Portsmouth with the intention of being trained to detect German U-boats.
That's the true hero, right? That's the World War movie that I want to see. That's interesting. Did it
The
work?
idea was that they'd feed seals from the submarine, and so that every time a seal saw a submarine or a U-boat, they'd go, "Oh, that's where I get food from," and they'd start making loads of noise and honking, and that would alert British forces to the presence of U-boats. Unsurprisingly, there's no record of it actually being successful.
People have tried stranger things, to be fair. They've gone with so I can see the theory.
It is surprisingly grounded in logic. I can see how somebody would think that was feasible.
Because you use birds, you use pigeons, you use all sorts of things to communicate during battle and during war. Why not seals? But yeah, although I feel like that you've just reminded, there's so many seals are the rogue. Seals and sea lions are rogue in terms of their history with zoos, because I remember there's an article popped up on my Facebook a while ago that was about the history of seals and sea lions at Edinburgh Zoo. And there was a period throughout the 1900s where they kept escaping and getting into rivers around Edinburgh. And I'm like, how? What? what? How did that get out over a fence and out and over, so yeah, I can see I'm glad to know there's a similarly chaotic history of seals at Bristol. So yeah, interesting stuff. Um,
Yeah. So yeah, First World War was tricky, but that kind of the biggest impact they saw was their seals going off.
mhm,
Second World War, slightly more drastic because of the kind of bombing campaigns,
mhm,
and they were worried about the government was worried about zoos that were in big cities like Bristol, London, that had kind of big animals.
mhm,
So that meant that they had to move some of their kind of big animals, the large carnivores and venomous snakes and things like that, were had to be kind of shuffled around, and so it meant that for Bristol Zoo, two leopards, a tiger, and a lioness were actually sent off to Chester Zoo, um, which was in a smaller town, so less likely to be kind of targeted by big bombing raids. But it did unfortunately mean that the zoo's polar bears at that time did have to be euthanized because they couldn't find a new home for them. Um, and the risk of them escaping was just too severe.
mhm. I mean, I can see why they wouldn't want them to escape, but yeah, that's an interesting but
Yeah,
sad part of
absolutely.
history.
Yeah, again, that's not unique to Bristol Zoo. I think quite a
Mhm,
few zoos kind of had to deal with that as well. I think there's quite a famous story of I think it was an elephant from was it Belfast Zoo, I think, that um, a lot of their larger animals had to be euthanized because of again bombing
mhm,
raids, and the elephant was smuggled out of the zoo by a couple of the keepers that worked there, and they tried to keep it safe.
mhm.
I think they made a film of it recently.
That's, I mean, it would be an interesting plot for a film, very Free Willy esque. So I can see why that would a film producer would grip onto that one. I think as well that it's ringing a bell about kind of London to Whipsnade type vibe. Like I would seem to remember like London Zoo, Whipsnade, obviously huge in the middle of nowhere, shipped a lot of stuff out there. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think that was another situation of kind of like finding these places out in the countryside, almost like what they were doing with children and other things, just getting anything out that didn't need to be there, like just shipping it out. Yeah. I really like this is not a part of history I expected to touch on in such detail, but it's really interesting because I didn't know anything about it really. So that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of I think when you think of things like war, you think of the huge kind of very wide implications, but it's things like this that you don't kind of really consider. Um,
Mm.
but it did just kind of touch every aspect of society, including zoos.
Yeah. Interesting. Really, really interesting. I guess if, not to move on from war and its importance, but is there any more light-hearted history points that we could touch just to really change the tone up for the listeners in case they're they're feeling that the war topic is maybe too heavy? What else have you got going on your list of things?
I so Bristol Zoo's kind of been very significant in terms of the history of the site and the history of zoos as well, but also in terms of kind of the zoo industry as a whole and the the welfare and kind of driving forward the keeping of animals and things. And I've got quite a list of firsts that happened at Bristol Zoo. Um, so it's touching a little bit on the births and stuff again, but kind of um,
Do you want to quick fire them? How many are there?
I've got quite. I was going to say I've got quite a list, so I might quick fire
Okay,
them.
go for it.
Um, so back in 1903, there was the first outside house for monkeys. Up until then, monkeys hadn't been kept outside um, because it's thought they wouldn't cope with the UK cold. So that was a UK first.
Hmm.
The first chimpanzee born in Europe was in 1934. A big one. We had the world's first ever nocturnal house.
Interesting. I like
So
that.
that was in 1953. It was previously a reptile house. That was what was currently still in the middle of the zoo, and up until recently held our forest of birds.
Mhm.
So it started as a reptile house, then became a nocturnal house, and then was eventually converted into a bird house. But yeah, we were the first to keep animals on a reverse lighting cycle,
Mhm.
so we could see things like we had night monkeys, we had echidna, we had um, lots of species of mouse lemur. We had eye, all things like that that were kept in there. And it kind of that was the initial one before it moved over to the more recent nocturnal house as well. The first black rhino born in the UK was 1958. That was I think he was called Roger. He was born to mum Stephanie.
Shout out to Steph, my previous guest
Yeah.
on the podcast. No comparison, no shade, no comparisons in a nasty way. Just shout out to you for no reason whatsoever.
As you mentioned, first okapi in the UK Zoo in 1961. The first pair of white tigers in a zoo outside India.
Mhm.
They came over in 1963. The first Lynn's two-toed sloth breeding in 1978 in the UK. The aquarium that was developed into its current form around the 1980s opened in 1986 with the first walk-through tank, the first walk-through tunnel tank in the UK.
I love that.
I thought you'd appreciate that being a big aquarium there.
I am an aquarium boy at heart, and I do having spent most of my late teens into early 20s in a walk-through tunnel. Anything about walk-through tunnels, I'm like, yes, tell me more. And is it the same tunnel that is there now, or is the is it the same one?
It's the same tunnel.
Love it. And because when I went through, I specifically, um, no spoilers, but we may or may not have recorded Jodi's section of the podcast later on already. I may come back to that and one particular species which I love in that tunnel. So look forward to that, listeners, in section 2 of the podcast coming up soon. Sorry to interrupt, but
Also, the first UK breeding of Sumatran tiger, 1989.
that's a huge
The
one, actually. That's a really huge
that
one.
It's really huge because that is such a staple of UK collections these days. So absolutely massive. Um, Quite a lot smaller, quite literally. The black marsh turtle, which is an endangered species of turtle, hatched for the first time in Europe. That's a fairly recent one at 2004. We had the first baby eye in the world to be hand reared in 2005. And then 10 years later, had the first eye twins born as well in 2015. And then lastly, Eastern Quoll bred for the first time in the UK back in 2017.
And they are, if I'm thinking correctly, listeners, everybody go and look up a picture of a quoll because they are the most charming animals on planet Earth. Like they're the little gerbily hamstery looking things, aren't they?
Yes, so that I think you're probably thinking of a quokka,
Oh, I am. No, well,
but
Google quokka and then
quolls are quite closely related to quokka, if I'm correct, and they are no less adorable.
I'm
They are
looking up a
absolutely fantastic.
quoll. Oh yes, can confirm. Listeners, go and look up a photo of a quoll. Oh, there's one. Like I don't know. I'm going to show Connor a picture. I don't know. Like, look at this guy. Look at that. Like, listeners, I'm so sorry you're not experiencing this with me, but it's about the third or fourth photo along when you search for qualls. So really, go and do it. So cute, so charming.
Yeah,
10 out of
so
10.
they were fantastic. Again, another species that lived in our nocturnal house
Mhm.
at one point, so they were brilliant. Um, so yeah, that's just a selection of things. I had to really kind of cherry
Mhm.
pick, but it just kind of goes to show the absolute kind of advances that we were able to make in welfare that made all of those first breedings
Mhm.
possible. That made sure it was kind of breeding them at Bristol that was successful, and kind of making those leaps forward in welfare as well. And just the significance of all these things that have happened at our wonderful site that have had kind of kick-started breeding programs or had this impact
Mhm.
on the UK zoo sector and indeed the sector at a worldwide level as well.
Mhm. And what stands out to me, I suppose, is kind of the fact that this isn't all history from 180 years ago. This is history that's taken place over 180 years and up until very modern times. Huge successes and things like I think if you were to get people to guess when was the first Sumatran tiger born in like I think people would have thought ages ago, years and years and years, decades, decades, decades. But the fact it was that recent in terms of history and happened at Bristol, so significant. Same with the rhino, same with all of these amazing things is so fantastic. And things that we consider to be almost standard practice now. And in fact, I think a lot of zoos would be docked now points by people if they went in and they didn't have some kind of nocturnal animal, or they didn't have some kind of interesting breeding program, or they didn't have tigers doing whatever they're doing and trying to breed. Like all of these things that are considered standard practice, it seems that Bristol was leading the way on in a lot of ways, and I think that's really exciting and really interesting. Um, And yeah, just really inspiring as well to kind of hit all of these points throughout history so quickly, but so amazing. So amazing.
Yeah, in terms of the welfare as well, we were one of the very early members, if not founding members, of what is now BIARZA as well. So kind of the body that regulates zoos and kind of makes sure they're up to standard.
Mm.
We were very kind of integral in helping to set that up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a very important place in the history of zoos.
Mm. And yes, for listeners who don't know, like that is the organization that governs how zoos treat animals, how they run, how they kind of do presentations. It sets the rule book for pretty much everything. So to be involved in the start of that as well, fantastic, really, really interesting. And yeah, nowadays, if you're not a part of BIAS in the UK, there's question marks next to your name. So to be that heavily involved in such a foundational piece of like zoo history in the UK is absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Um, I suppose unless you have any more points throughout history that you'd like to touch on, do you? Before I go on and ask my question, do you have any last minute historical things?
I don't think so. I think we've exhausted everything I kind of brought to the table.
I'm glad we did because we started this and I was like, Connor, we're shooting for around this time. We're already over that, and I don't care because I loved every second of hearing that. This episode is just for me, listeners. I don't care if you enjoy it. I've had a great time listening to all this stuff. But as with all these, we could sit and go through history forever and ever. But what I wanted to do was talk about kind of some of the modern zoo experience and some of the things that made the zoo special maybe to you and some of the listeners who are maybe at home who've visited in more recent times. And I wondered, when we look at the zoo today, what are some of your favorite bits of the zoo? What are the things that you really love that are kind of the standout things for you when you were there?
There's just so much. I mean, it is it's kind of hard to say because I think my feelings in general towards the zoo, a lot of them come from the fact that it was the first zoo that I got into and worked at and kind of had a significant role in. And so I think you'll know, being from the sector, that it's so hard to get into zoos and it is so hard to kind of actually get your foot in the door that the first one you do will always have a really significant kind of place. And to have it be somewhere as historical and, well regarded as Bristol has been brilliant. And so the kind of past 4.5 years I've been at Bristol have been absolutely amazing, just because it's kind of seen a very significant shift forward in my kind of development as someone that started out as wanting to work in a zoo and now does work at a zoo. But I think it is just such a zoo with such character because of the history that you can almost feel it as you walk around. And so while it means that there's echoes of the past and it feels significant. And yeah, some of my kind of favourite bits at the moment, I absolutely love our tree kangaroo. I think again they were the first. He was, or our pair that we had originally rather, were the first tree kangaroos I ever saw. Absolutely wonderful species. Again, one of those ones that I'd never actually heard of a tree kangaroo before they came to Bristol. And so it was a little glimpse of that kind of Victorian experience of seeing an animal that you never even knew existed. And that was absolutely wonderful. Again, the nocturnal house, going back to that, some of the species I saw in there, I was seeing for the first time. And I've always loved a nocturnal house. I don't know what it is. It's something kind of completely fascinating about animals that live in such a different way to us and kind of act in a completely different way after dark. And Twilight World, which is the latest iteration of the Nocturnal House at Bristol, was just such a good example of a nocturnal house because it had so many different species in there. It wasn't just nocturnal mammals. We had a rattlesnake, we had cockroaches, we had geckos, we had nocturnal fish. It was fantastic, and it just brought together so many different taxa, so many different species that behaved in different ways. It was just a really, really incredible experience, kind of coming through that nocturnal house for the first time or for the 50th time. And I think it was incredibly, incredibly significant.
That's really interesting. Like it's yeah, both things that are bizarre, interesting, fantastic. I can see why you love them. And yeah, I couldn't when I went to the zoo, I couldn't like wrap my head around just how much there was there and tucked away in little things and all these little houses and all this history. So I can see exactly why over the years that you've volunteered and then kind of got more and more involved, how there would be so many little bits that you would kind of start to fall in love with and kind of really like grow attached to. It's fantastic and really, really amazing. I guess for me, some of the things that stood out, I really loved those big tortoises were stars for me. Stars, absolute stars. They're Aldabra giant tortoises. Is that correct? Yeah.
Algebra giant tortoises, yeah, we got four of them.
hmm
Mike, Helen, Twiggy, and Biggie.
Again, names 10 out of 10. Like, fantastic. Excellent work. And they were living with an iguana called
Yeah,
Alice.
Alice,
hmm
35-year-old rhinoceros iguana.
Yep. Fantastic. Love them. I loved I don't know. There were so many little bits where I was like, this is just the most charming. So they were fantastic. I loved the meerkats, fantastic, because I loved popping my little heads up through the holes. Even though I had to wait for children to leave to get my head in that little dome, I was doing it. Loved it. Um I loved there was just so much to like fall in love with. The seals, the penguins, everything like is there one having you like worked in all done all of the talks and all of the education sessions, is there one that like sticks out that you're going to be like, this was my favorite, this was the one that I loved doing the most?
I love the Red Panda talk.
Mm.
The Red Panda talk has become my absolute favourite because when we started running it again back earlier this year, I helped to rewrite it. This isn't me just saying it's my favourite because I did it. Um, but the Red Panda talk historically hadn't been kind of very engaging because of it was always shoehorned in at a bit of a strange time, and so we managed to put it in a nice segment where people were there and it got really busy, and we put in quite a lot of humour in it as well, and so everyone just seems to have a really, really good time at the Red Panda talk. Everyone's laughing. It kind of pokes fun at the animals a little bit because you think about it, red pandas are ridiculous.
Mhm.
They're a carnivore that eats plants and is just tired all the time because of it. They're an animal that has evolved a thumb to make sure it doesn't have to move around to eat its bamboo. It's the concept of a red panda is
Mhm.
ridiculous, and so actually being able to poke fun at that animal while telling people why it's amazing seems to go down really well, and people are always laughing. And it's a very, very nice talk to deliver.
I can see that. And they're so lovable that like you could say get up there and say really anything. And even if they weren't laughing, if the crowd was not the right audience for a joke and a laugh, they're gonna love it because red pandas are so inherently just lovable. They're just the best. And like, yeah, my co-host Jodi, if she were here right now, would be asking you all the questions about the red pandas because they are her absolute fave. But yes, they fantastic. I just yeah, I can see why. I can see why. I'm trying to think of other ones that like. What else? What were your like? If we've gone red pandas, we've got like number two on the list. Who's the sec? I need to like. I'm just being nosy now to be like, who else? What else did you rewrite and want to big up? What was your?
I really like the seal talk as well.
Mm.
So I didn't rewrite as much of that one, but it's always a winner
Mhm.
because did you see the seal talk when you were down?
I did not, but I saw them up getting their like. It looked like there was some kind of health check going on. They were just getting like
Ooh.
something was going on. There was someone around the back feeding them and looking at stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. So as part of our seal talk, we do a load of training with them. So we get them to show off all the behaviours that we kind of train our seals to do. And so it's not kind of behaviours for entertainment purposes. They're all kind of health checks. So we get them to raise up their flippers so we can check underneath them and make sure they've not got any cuts or scrapes. Same by getting them to spin around and things like that.
Mhm.
So we can get a good view of all sides of their body, open up their mouth, so we can check their teeth and make sure they're all in good condition, and also lie nice and flat and still, to make sure we can get them to lie down on scales, get a good weight, and also do kind of medical procedures without needing to anaesthetize them
Mhm.
as well. And so, as part of our talk, is effectively just a training session that would be happening anyway, but we invite people along to watch. And it's a great one because people really love seeing these animals do something slightly different to what you might be expecting. Love learning about why we do that and the fact that it's not just to show off to the public, but it's really important in keeping our seals nice and healthy as well. And it's also really enriching for the seals, and they really like kind of having a crowd about and kind of doing these training, and it keeps it nice and interesting for them as well. So that's got to be another standout one. That's always, I think, our second busiest talk of the day, if not the busiest.
I always like, I love that, and I think the other reason I love it beyond the like sealness of it, I think it's a good looking back at the history as we've just been discussing. I think people have a very set image in their mind of what a seal show experience should be, because they think of like them up balancing things, and they think of it as just as kind of like almost like watching a clown do magic tricks.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to take something like that, and I remember doing it at the aquarium where I worked, like taking that and demystifying it and being kind of like, actually, we do all of these things for the seal's health benefit, whether it be maybe in the past the other collections or whatever it was, or would have done it for different reasons for entertainment, but nowadays it is entertaining, but it is not done for you. It's done for them, is really a good thing to do, and like always fun. If any big fans out there really want to see me embarrassing myself somewhere on the internet, and I will not tell you where, and I will not name the aquarium, but the aquarium that I worked for, somewhere on their Facebook page is me singing happy birthday to a seal in front of conservatively, I would say 200 to 300 people, where it was meant to be an audience kind of participation thing. Not quite as audience participatory as I would have liked, given I was holding a microphone and therefore mine is the only voice you can hear on the recording. So if you're a big fan and want to see me humiliate myself, it's out there. Good luck finding it. For the big ReZOO pangolin fans, go have a look, see what you can find.
Okay, BRB. I'm just going to scroll furiously and try and find that. That sounds
I
incredible.
have a gorgeous voice.
We'll be coming back to that.
Uh, it's really special. Yeah, it's very Marilyn Monroe, Happy Birthday, Mr. President vibes to a seal. It's really truly special. No, now. um, Moving swiftly on, I guess something that maybe we should touch on, actually, that's I didn't write down as a question, but you as an educator will be prepped and ready because you will probably be asked these questions very often. What if people are kind of wondering about Bristol Zoo and kind of some of the conservation projects that we haven't mentioned already? Is there any? I know when you previously appeared on the show, we talked about the desertus wolf spiders, which were incredible. So, listeners, you can go back and listen to that one. But is there any project that the zoo's involved in now that really you haven't had a chance to speak about yet, but you're like, this is the one I want to mention because it's fantastic and I love it?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a really good kind of well-timed question because this summer at the zoo and Wild Place, we've been talking about our conservation heroes and kind of some of the projects we do all around the world. I think one of the big ones that we've seen a really good public reaction to is actually not all around the world, but right in the southwest, and that's the work you touched on it before with the white-clawed crayfish. And so we've got a native species team as part of the society that work to protect the native white-clawed crayfish, the only UK native crayfish that kind of is found quite a lot around the southwest, but is kind of at risk from the invasive signal crayfish that was brought over from America back in the 1970s. And so they came over and they were brought over by fishermen who introduced them to lakes, rivers, water sources all around the southwest. And they were eating the white-clawed crayfish, so they directly predate them. They also bring over something that is lovely called crayfish plague.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've had war. Why not touch on plague? Let's go for that. Yeah.
exactly. We're touching on everything. So this is it's a disease that is not fatal to signal crayfish, but is very fatal to white-clawed crayfish. And so that has wiped out a lot of the white-clawed crayfish, and their numbers are down 70% since signals were brought over. And the work that the team do as part of Bristol Zoo, actually, they go out there and find these kind of water sources where there are signal crayfish and white-clawed crayfish. We rescue those white-clawed crayfish, take them out, check them for crayfish plague, make sure they're nice and healthy, and then we have a rescue facility based at Bristol Zoo Gardens behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will take them there, we'll look after them, we'll breed them, and then we'll go and place healthy adults out in what we call ARC sites,
Mm-hmm.
which is a secret water source. It might be a lake, it might be a section of river, and they will live out there. We'll make sure there's no signal crayfish, and those sites are actually really secret to make sure that people can't go there and interfere with them, catch the crayfish, introduce more crayfish, or anything like that. So even I don't actually know where any of those sites are, because it is only people that work on those projects. And that's a project in collaboration with lots of other organisations around the southwest as well. And as part of that, you may or may not have noticed, but as you walk into the aquarium at Bristol Zoo, just at the entrance is actually a little tank with some of the youngsters from our white-clawed crayfish breeding programme in there to show people what they look like. And they are actually adorable. It's not usually a word that's used to describe crayfish, I don't think, but they're very, very sweet.
I love that because, yeah, I'm just thinking about like the perhaps more glamorous, well-known equivalent of that in the mammal world, as mammals always seem to get the attention. Would it's very stumbling over my words? I'm too enraged by the fact that crayfish are not getting enough attention. Um, it would be squirrels. It sounds very similar to the squirrel storyline of kind of greys versus red squirrels in the UK, and how the greys came across and spread disease and kind of ate the same things as the reds, and then all of a sudden you kind of have decreasing red squirrel populations, the native, and then all of a sudden this influx of grey squirrels. So really, really interesting to hear that. Yeah, let's shift the conversation. I mean, squirrels deserve our love too. Let's not forget about the squirrels, but shift some of the conversation onto crayfish because that's an interesting, bizarre thing that I feel like we need to talk about more. We need to, yeah, get some more attention onto. I'm also just thinking about like the fact that I'm just picturing you one day going out for a walk, just casually, like out for maybe a little hike or stroll in the countryside, accidentally stumbling across one of these crayfish sites, losing your mind, being like, I'm the charity savior. I have found a population that is safe from this disease. They cannot. I'm going to get such a promotion. It's going to be the best day of my life. Phoning up and being like, leave and never go back. From the staff being like, Connor, you must never return there and you must never tell people what you found in this place. Because that's that would, yeah, I don't know why that's in my mind, but I feel like it would be a great story. Great. Fantastic. That's really, really interesting. I like how when you were here last time we talked spiders and this time crayfish. You're really getting the vibe of the podcast. 100% correct. 100%.
It's really nice, and it's been a great opportunity to try and shout about the conservation that happens at home as well. You know, I think a lot of people think of conservationists only working over in the most exotic kind of places in the world, but actually, there's quite a lot around here that also needs looking after.
Exactly. And I, yeah, couldn't agree more. Go out and find your local conservation places, people. Find out what's going on around you because there's bound to be something strange going on or interesting or bizarre. So yeah, fantastic. Now, I have two more questions for you. One of them is probably I'm hoping for podcast awards and tears for this segment. And then the next is more hopeful because my first question is, Connor, obviously, this is the end of something very significant in your life. You, of course, are going to be moving to work at the Wild Place Project. You'll be around. You'll still be part of this society and the collection as it moves over to the new place. But Bristol Zoo, as we know and as we love, will be closing. So my question is, Connor, what do you think you'll miss most about Bristol Zoo when it's gone? Yeah, when it closes its doors for the last time.
I think that's a very, very tricky one because there is, again, so much that I will miss. But I think it is just such a unique little site. It is so unique. It's got so much character, and it holds such a special place in its little corner of Bristol because it's surrounded by housing on three sides, and then on the fourth, you've got a wonderful natural expanse in the Avon Gorge and Downs, which is another conservation project we also run as well. But it is just a magical little place, again, with all the history that's packed into it, all the kind of strange, unique buildings. it's it's just really kind of different to any other zoo I've ever been to, because it is, it's a little bit pieced together, and it's a little bit, we've updated where we can and tried to make the most of it. But we're only 12 acres, so we are a very small site, and it just feels like a little perfect slice of the wild in amongst this very big, kind of crowded city.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a little, almost like a little calm oasis in amongst everything else. And so it's been my way of kind of, escaping once a week, kind of from the bustle of city life. And I think it's had that effect on a lot of people as well. So that seems to be what a lot of people are going to miss. And kind of some of the animals that are there that are incredibly charismatic as well won't initially be moving with us to Wild Place. And so the things that kind of built in a lot of that character as well. So hearing the roar of the lions, hearing the hoots of the gibbons and the howls of the gibbons, and the kind of the flamingos and things like that, all of those kind of very iconic zoo sounds and make it really feel like you're at a zoo. A lot of those species will be moving on to other locations initially. Whether we may see them again in future, or not, it it's just kind of, yeah, that kind of move away from a lot of those things that make the site what it is. And yeah, it is going to be very tough. And I think a lot of people are coming in and are quite sad, because it does have this huge place in everyone's hearts. But it will, yeah, it will be tough, but it's going to be very hopeful for the future as well.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get. Did I get you? I can't tell on the camera. No, I just.
Not quite. I think. Oh, I almost cried at the end of a Red Panda talk the other day.
The last time I ever did a talk at my first ever collection was in a glass top tunnel, and it was a really small crowd because it was the middle of a week, and then at the end began sobbing. So I was like, I've talked about these sea bass every day for the last like why are sea bass making me emotional? Like I don't like. And like on previous ReZOOs, I've given sea bass a bit of a hard time, but maybe it's my buried deep down bias against them because they were the ones that really set me off on my last day. But no, I can't. Yeah, you did well, because I can't imagine like if Edinburgh Zoo closed, my brain would just shut down. I just would go like be devastated. Like it would be like losing a member of the family. I'd be like, this is a disaster. This is the worst thing to ever happen. So you did very well to get through that, and it was a very good speech, because I think zoos, yeah, they mean more than just like a day out to some people. They're like a place for like stress relief. They're a place for hobbies. They're a place for family and for friends and for like celebrating the natural world and learning new things and like falling in love with nature, and like all of these things is just so important and special. So I can see why listeners, if you're visited Bristol Zoo and have that connection, I can see exactly why you would be sad, because it's so fantastic and wonderful and means so much, I think, to a lot of people. And yeah, I'm glad you made it through that, because I was very worried. I did not. We're doing this virtually. I can't give you a tissue. I can't give you a hug. I just have to sit here and be like, cool. Um, um sad. But no, yeah, fantastic, fantastic. And yes, I guess last question. Turned a corner onto something hopeful, something good, something exciting. Because as we've been kind of discussing throughout, Bristol Zoo, that site may be closing, but you do, of course, as Bristol Zoological Society, have the Wild Place project, which is, I can say, because I recently visited, a fantastic new project on the outskirts of Bristol, I suppose. Much bigger site, much more room to evolve, much more room to change, much more room to grow. And it's going to be kind of a new, exciting, fantastic place to be. They've already announced some fantastic things that are coming to that zoo. I believe there's things like maybe rhinos were announced. There were, obviously, you mentioned like the gorillas will be moving across, like all of these things, all good stuff happening. And I wondered, Connor, looking forward into the future of Bristol Zoo in whatever form and shape that may take, what are you most hopeful or excited for going forward?
I mean, I think all of it. It is. Again, it sounds. like I'm just not committing to an answer, but everything is so exciting
Mhm.
about it because it's a real chance to kind of start not from afresh because we've already got quite a lot there, and we've got a lot of the big animals that we aren't able to have at Bristol there already. But it feels like a very big chance to start a zoo almost from scratch and make it really what we want of it, what it needs to be in this modern age. So it's not trying to update old enclosures to meet modern standards. We can literally build them from scratch, purpose built, suitable for the animals that we're going to put in them. So our gorillas are going to have a real woodland, a real forest that they are able to live in with a purpose built house that was built with gorillas in mind. Um, and they're going to have more space. They're going to have another species of monkey in there with them. So um, they're going to have cherry crowned mangabees sharing the same enclosure in a mixed species exhibit to kind of add to the enrichment and the enjoyment of that space as well, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's very really interesting to kind of see the dynamics and the interactions between those as well. Um, and yeah, these wonderful extra species that we're going to get. I'm so excited for rhinos. I'm so excited. I absolutely love rhinos. We're getting eastern black rhinos, which are just fantastic,
Mhm.
brilliant to watch. Um, so, I mean, as soon as I get wind that they're coming, I'm going to start writing a rhino talk as soon as possible.
Mhm.
Just make sure we can get that one under the belt because they are brilliant and they're going to be again in another wonderful enclosure. And then we've got chances to kind of bring all of our operations over from Bristol in these purpose built areas
Mhm.
and introduce the public to them as well. So our conservation breeding centre, elements of that will be on show to the public so they can see the behind the scenes work that we're doing to breed really endangered fish, insects, reptiles, amphibians, and kind of really showcase that work that we do, but we don't necessarily show off or shout about as much on the current Bristol Zoo site. So yeah, it's all very very exciting. It complements what we already have over at Wild Place um, as well, and it's a long way away. So it's going to be a few years of development before we start to see any of that. But the idea that it's on its way is just really, really hopeful, and it offers a nice way to safeguard the legacy of a society that is, coming up to 200 years old.
Mhm. I think that's fantastic. I think that's such a hopeful, great answer because it is. It's this nice way of looking forward and being celebratory. And yes, I'm not giving away too much because our next ReZOO will be of the wild place. But having visited what is there already is fantastic. So if the same quality and thought and space and everything is given as that site develops to all of these new things, I can see why you are so hopeful and so excited because it is so fantastic and it will be. There's a lot, and yeah, I can see why you're excited, especially for like rhinos. I'm a big rhino fan, a big rhino. We were just saying about how we need to shout about the little guys a bit more, but also rhinos, they you can't not shout about rhinos because they are just the best. They're just fantastic. And so yeah, fantastic, amazing, 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 amazing. um I guess though, having said all of that, we have gone through 186 years in about an hour. So I feel like we've done well, but before we go, is there anything else that we haven't touched on? Any story, any memory, anything at all, any any shout outs, anything at all you want to say anything about before we wrap up? Anything else that you wanted to mention?
I think just a final shout out to everyone that has worked at Bristol Zoo and its current site over the past 186 years.
Mhm.
I mean, everyone that's kind of made it what it is, because as much as you can fill a zoo with animals, it wouldn't run without the people behind it. And the one thing that has kind of shown throughout this incredible history is the passion of the people that work there and the people that come in day after day to look after the animals, to keep the site looking great, to do the gardening, to make sure it looks beautiful, and give everyone a day out to do the education sessions, to market it effectively, to kind of come in and plan the next development and the future rather of the site. I think it is clear the passion that goes into the running it every day.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't have been such an incredible, historical, significant place without an incredible group of people behind it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's just a big thank you for everyone that has had a part, however big or small, whether it was working there, whether it was volunteering there, whatever they've done that's made Bristol Zoo what it is today. I think they can all be incredibly proud.
Mhm. Oh, I feel like that final proud almost got. I feel like I almost got a tear out of you there. Your voice kind of broke there at the end. I'm going for the podcast equivalent of like an Oscar. So if you want to cry, you can. No, that was that was so fantastic and brilliant. And you're absolutely correct. The passion of the people who have been there and loved it and cherished it and fallen in love with the animals and kind of worked day in and day out to make sure that the animals and the people have the best experience. The people being the guests, I suppose, and the other co-workers. Like fantastic, like brilliant. And yeah, excellent, 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 excellent. And yeah, fantastic. I don't really have much more to add because you've summed it all up so nicely. I guess that then, though, I could sit here and talk all night about this, but I think that then brings us to the end of our little section. Do not worry, listeners, though. I know you will have missed Jodi. I know she is the half of this duo that you usually love more. I know. So we will be saying goodbye to Connor in just a moment, but don't go away, because in just a second, Jodi will be back to give us her closing thoughts and her 2 stars, the things she loves most about Bristol Zoo as well. So that will be happening in just a second. But for now, I just want to say a massive thank you to you, Connor, and to any other members of staff or anyone at Bristol Zoo for making my day there so special. Steph, thank you for also showing us around. Fantastic. But of course, special thanks to you, Connor, for your time and everything. It's been fantastic, amazing. The work that you put into research was so interesting, and I'm so glad that I have been able to sit here and listen firsthand to all of this. I hope the listeners loved it as much as I do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Bristol Zoo people, but also especially you, Connor. Thank you so much for your time and for everything.
No, thank you. It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome, and I'm sure you will be back again soon. But for now, for now, bye.
Bye-bye.
And welcome back to the show. Thank you once again to Connor for your amazing insights and thoughts. It was so amazing to speak to you and for you to give us a little tour around the zoo yourself. It was just the best day, and thank you so much once again. Now though, it is time to reintroduce my lovely co-host Jodi. Thank you for sticking around, for listening to all of that, and yes, now your turn to contribute and join the conversation.
Yes, I am back.
Perfect. And well, I will hand it over to you. Could you tell us, Jodi? We're going to be doing our 2 stars and our closing thoughts now. What was your favourite part of Bristol Zoo? What did you love? What was one of your first stars of the day?
Ooh, one of the things I loved, and I always love this kind of thing because coming from an aquarium background, this is always a hit for me. I really loved the exhibit that had the penguins and the fur seals in it. I liked it up top, and I liked it when you went underground and you saw through the underwater viewing tunnels and the windows as well. Just love anything like that. So I definitely think that was one of my stars. If I could lift up that exhibit and take it and move it somewhere else so that it could live on, then I definitely would.
Mm-hmm. I really loved the seals as well. I think they were fantastic. And to see them kind of on land and then diving under the water and then on land and then diving, and then it was just fantastic. And I think, yeah, I just love them. And I the thing I love about fur seals is they defy all definition of seal that we like. When obviously in Scotland, when we're teaching about seals, the seals that we teach about look so different.
Yeah.
These guys go almost to like the sea lion-y aesthetic more than a seal.
They're quite big and chunky and yeah.
Whereas our grey seals and harbour seals and all that sort of stuff look so different to this. So it's just a fantastic thing to see and really, really interesting. And yeah, I love them. I think it's because they are South American fur seals that they have, which are found around the kind of coasts of South America, funnily enough, given the name. They are just a little bit of conservation information because I've got to drop it in. This species was hunted almost to extinction at a time. And up until about 1991, they were still hunted in places like Uruguay. But that has started to kind of change, and so hopefully they will be on the road to recovery. They're now classified as least concern, which is excellent. However, there is a growing threat, which is the reduction of fish stocks that the seals depend on as a result of large-scale kind of commercial fishing. So it seems to be once one threat fades, another one rises. And so it is
the frying pan into the fire.
Yes, we need to kind of still worry and keep fighting for these amazing guys because they were so charismatic and so lovely, and I just loved seeing them. So I couldn't agree more. It was such a nice, and I think especially because it was a lovely, nice day when we went.
Yeah, there was a lot of them up top, and I think someone had just been feeding them as well because all of them were kind of together, looking up as if to be like, oh, what's she doing? Is there fish? Is anything happening? So they were all being, very lively, which was lovely.
I did think it was funny though because they are very cute. But also in every photo I've taken of them, they look horrible and menacing because they just have those faces of like, Urgh. You're like, well, I thought you were cute still.
Yes, cute in their own way.
Yes. So yeah, that's a good first star. I would say my first star, the thing that I loved about Bristol Zoo when we went, was definitely all of the different buildings that they had. They had an aquarium building, they had an insect building and a reptile building. And the reason I think I love them is here in Scotland, we don't have a lot of that. A lot of our zoos are very outside, they're very big mammals, they're very kind of outdoor creatures. And so to get to see something that's just not common for us to experience is just really special.
And a lot of the time these buildings, in places that we've been before, like London Zoo and whatnot, that have similar buildings, they're always quite historic. So there's always a history to them and a story behind them. And it's like, when this building was built, it was the first one that did this. Or this was originally built to house this. And now it's something completely different. And I love all that kind of stuff. Like a little snapshot of history.
Yeah, and I just think they were fantastic and they contained fantastically weird and wonderful things. And as an underappreciated animals podcast, we've got to kind of highlight those strange oddballs of the animal kingdom. And I think it was just fantastic. I loved seeing all of the different tanks in the aquarium in particular. I am always partial to an alligator gar. There's something about a gar that really speaks to me, which I just love. And it was just a beautiful, wonderful, lovely set of spaces. The reptile house, again, also kind of jumped out at me because, again, if we're comparing it to London Zoo, which is another one we've talked about recently, London Zoo's reptile house is really cool, but it is very... And within the exhibits are really lively, but within the building itself is quite... not sterile, but it's not themed really. It's just kind of a corridor around. Whereas this reptile house was more like there was big plants growing, there was a big waterfall, and I kind of liked that aesthetic, that kind of vibe. Was really, really nice as well. So I really loved all of the different little houses. And it's something that I wish, again, if I was going to move something to somewhere else, I wish I could copy and paste it somewhere else.
We always say that, don't we? We've said that before about the zoo and whatnot. Like, we wish that there could be more indoor buildings, like a big tropical house and stuff like that, because we love that. So, I'm just partial to an indoor house. I don't know why, I just like it. It's because we're from Scotland. We need indoor houses because it's always raining.
Yep. There's just something about walking into like Edinburgh Zoo, our local kind of zoo. There's something about going inside to like the sloth house, which is always feels like it's about 700 degrees Celsius when you walk in. You're just like, this is lovely compared to like outdoors in Scotland, which is blowing a gale sideways always. So any indoor houses would be welcome up here. So that's my kind of take on my first star, I think. Now, Jodi, I'm passing it back to you. What is your second star, your second favourite thing that you loved about Bristol?
I'm going to give it to the bats. I really loved that bat walkthrough. We were with a friend who was a little bit nervous because she's scared of birds, and bats were just a little bit too close to birds, and she was concerned that they would be flying about. But no, there was actually loads of them, wasn't there? In the outdoor bit, there was one guy who was really active and
crawling about.
That was, I've never seen a bat act like that. That was brilliant. And it was amazing to be up so close and to see the little face in so much detail, and I just loved it. I really fell in love with the bats because of that experience in a way that I never have before. So there's a massive star for it. And then in the indoor part of the exhibit, there was like 3 or 4 more inside. That was really good. I wish more places had a bat walkthrough. That was a really interesting take on a walkthrough for me.
Would it shock you to know that the Bristol Zoo website says that Bristol Zoo is home to 12 Livingston's fruit bats?
12?
12.
Oh, I was impressed by 5, so there you go.
Honestly,
12.
I do, and I love bats because, again, they fall into this underappreciated, underloved, but
Yeah.
actually are some of the, if you look at their little faces, they're the sweetest, nicest looking things in the world.
Yeah, their little face almost reminded me a bit of like a little lemur.
Yes.
That kind of wee face and the bright eyes, and the little fuzzy head.
And that's also very appropriate that you mentioned lemurs because these guys are found on the Comoros Islands, which are between Madagascar and Mozambique.
Oh,
Madagascar,
okay.
of course, being the home of the lemurs.
The lemurs, yeah.
And this is the only place in the world they're found. So they are critically endangered because of that. But organisations like Bristol Zoo and the Bristol Zoological Society, which of course lives on beyond Bristol Zoo,
Yep.
and their work are kind of helping to protect species like this. Just for anyone who's wondering, the population is under threat from habitat destruction in this area, and there's kind of pressures on the forests, obviously with human expansion and different things going on. So yeah, that's kind of the main threat to them. But of course, as I've said, Bristol Zoological Society, even though the zoo is closing, Bristol Zoological Society will go on to help hopefully protect these animals out in their habitats out in the wild as well, which is special. And I think the important part of the legacy of the zoo is obviously this work will hopefully live on in other forms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really, really nice. And yeah, I love the bats. I love a weird looking animal, and but you'd still give it a cuddle almost, I think.
Yeah, it was. It really was cute. And I wasn't expecting that from a bat, but there we go.
10 out of 10
Yeah.
for changing opinions.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. We love it.
And of course, shout out to Rona, who is our named friend who hates birds.
She did very well with the bats.
Yes, you're doing very well. And thank you very much for joining us at the zoo. So yes, very, very nice. To see the bats and her. My final star, I think, would be, I guess, it's the animal I think that they put on the posters. It's the headline of Bristol Zoo, and they're just fantastic and something that we've talked about with Connor. And that is, of course, the gorillas. I love them. I love them, love them, love them, love them. They're fantastic. They're big. They're chunky looking. They're kind of like, there's something about the great apes that always just get you excited. Things like, so the great apes are orangutans, chimps, bonobos, gorillas. They're really like great to see. I think they had 8, I believe. I've got the website in front of me. I'll just double check. Yes, they had 8 gorillas. There is Jock, the silverback, which, I mean, close enough to Jack that I'm going to claim it as a connection there. Then they had females, Kira, Kala, and Tuni. Youngsters, Afia and Ayana, and baby Hassani. So very, very big, cute family dynamic group, and really nice to see. I think there was also a statue for a gorilla called Alfred who'd been there during the war, and there was just this nice memorial. And again, yeah, just seeing the great apes and seeing them kept in this way was very, very nice. They had a nice big island space. Really loved that. These are one of the animals that's moving to the Wild Place project, hopefully at some point in the future. So really, really exciting, really, really nice to kind of have them there and see them and I experience them. And I really loved seeing the gorillas. Again, an important conservation message because they are another animal that, as I think most people know, with gorillas face huge threats out in the wild. And so it's really, really important that we chat about them. And yeah, I think, really, really just love them. I don't know, did you have thoughts on the gorillas?
I really liked their outdoor space, that they had that, it was quite natural. There was a lot of greenery out there. They had the little lake island situation going on. And I always used to get asked that in my old work about the chimpanzees. They had a similar setup with an island, and people are always a little bit concerned when they see an exhibit like that the animal might be able to swim across. And you have to explain to them, without sounding patronising, well, if it could swim, would we have this set up? Probably not. I don't think it would be safe if we had a big massive silverback gorilla able to just swim across and hop up onto land with us. But no, I liked it. There was some ducks swimming around in it as well. Just chill vibes.
Always a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of I know it's not been a traditional ReZOO. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. It's not been a kind of traditional thing, but I think we've really taken the time here to kind of highlight our favourite bits. Obviously, there was no point in us walking you around everything because you will not be able to go.
Yes.
But hopefully in memorialising these favourite little bits in our way that we have, you will have some picture of how special a place Bristol Zoo truly was.
That was very sad. But
What a note to
I
end on.
know, but we're going to bring it back up. We're going to bring the energy. We're going to hype it back up a little bit because, as always, we've done our stars. We're, of course, not going to do a wish because there's nothing really that we can change at this point.
Yep.
But what we would like to do is kind of do our word of the ReZOO and sum up the history, the legacy, the love of Bristol Zoo in the best way that we possibly can. Now, of course, it's a very hard choice to make up our minds and discuss kind of what that one word is. So we are going to hand that over to Connor because he works there and he will come up with the word for us. So Connor, please take it away. What is our word of the ReZOO?
I think the one word that I would most use would probably be progress, because I think, as we've kind of touched upon a lot, it has this incredible history, but throughout that it has always been moving forwards, trying to improve its welfare, improve the conditions it keeps the animals in, improve how people view zoos, not just Bristol Zoo, but zoos as a whole, as a conservation entity, and kind of really being at the forefront in a lot of ways of how zoos move forwards. And this is a huge time for the progression of Bristol Zoo, with the closing of one site and the transition to a new site. So I think progress kind of really, really sums up what Bristol Zoo has always been about, but especially what it will be about going forwards, and kind of, into the new era of what Bristol Zoo really is.
That's fantastic. I don't think any word could have summed that up better, and I'm so glad we threw back to you for that, because I don't think me or Jodi could have come up with that. That is fantastic and brilliant, and amazing. Excellent choice. Fantastic.
I feel like it's strange now ending a ReZOO like this, because it's not just the end of the ReZOO, it is the end of probably our ever. We can never go back to Bristol. It's very, very strange. It's the end of an era, and it's, as we've said, it's the 5th oldest zoo in the world. It feels like this kind of strange closure. It feels weirdly emotional, even though we've only visited. Well, it feels this weirdly emotional thing.
There is something about that, though, isn't there? About old zoos, and even though we look at it now through the eyes of modern zoo standards, it's always like a little piece of history that stood for so long is now closing. But one chapter closes, a new one begins.
Yes.
So let's think of it that way.
Yes.
Because, look on the bright side.
Yes, because of course, as we've said, everything that's going on with Bristol Zoo is closing because they have felt that they can't develop any more in that space. They need more room, they need more things to thrive, to come up with great ideas and to keep pushing forward. And so they're moving to the wild place. So even though this chapter is kind of ending, a new exciting chapter is also beginning. And it's a beginning for us as well, because of course the next ReZOO that we do will be of the wild place. It will be more of a normal ReZOO.
Yes.
We will be back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Our regularly scheduled nonsense.
Yes. And it will just be lovely and nice to actually have that have that discussion and talk about perhaps the future. We've looked back, now we can look forward.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
We've looked back, now we're looking forward.
Exactly. And it's just hopeful and nice. And I guess to end, what we should say is, of course, a massive thank you to everybody for listening. And of course, one last time, raising a glass one last time to Bristol Zoo. Thank you so much for, even though we only visited for a day, thank you for such amazing memories. Thank you for creating such a legacy. Thank you for embodying change and progress in zoos. Thank you for all of the work you've done protecting critically endangered species like the gorillas and the bats and just thank you for all of the work that you've done. Thank you to Connor, who took us around on the day. Thank you to Steph, who was also there, who also works at Bristol Zoo, who helped show us around. Thank you to just everyone who's been involved in that zoo throughout time, because it was just fantastic and special to be there and see it before it closed. So thank you. And on that note, thank you, listeners, as well for listening. You have been fantastic. Thank you for continuously supporting the show. If you're interested in listening to our upcoming ReZOO of the Wild Place project, make sure and hit subscribe on your podcast streaming service of choice, where you can also leave us a nice review as well if you are so inclined. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Pangolin Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, all over the place. And you can now follow me on Twitter as well. I am at OnlyJackBaker if you would like to follow me on there as well and keep up to date with everything that I'm up to as well.
Very exciting.
Yeah, and I can't promise it's exciting, but I'll be posting. Now, of course, thank you once again. Thank you. It feels weird to be concluding because it's like the end of an era. It's been a very emotional ride, but thank you so much.
I know. It's we need to wrap up before Jack starts crying.
I know, but thank you so much. Jodi, any final thoughts?
Goodbye.
Yes.
We just need to go now.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh.